Today, we're going to talk with 4 Master of Agribusiness alumni who worked in education and or have pursued a Ph.D. after earning their MAB. Today, we have Dr. Todd Higgins, MAB class of 2016, Mr. Joel Carlin, MAB class of 2001, Dr. Skyler Rinker, MAB class of 2017, and Ms. Jody Goetz, MAB class of 2019. I'm going to let the panelists each introduce themselves to you. I think they can do that better than I can. Many of them have extensive bios, both in education and in industry. So we're going to start with Dr. Todd Higgins.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm probably the odd duck because I came into the MAB program with a doctorate. I earned my doctorate in 1983 from the University of Arkansas. I'm an agronomist by training. I then went into the Army for 2 years and came out not quite 24 years later. Don't ask. During my military career, I had opportunities to teach at the college level as an adjunct instructor and took advantage of some of those opportunities. And so when I retired in 2007, I was teaching online for some colleges, one of which is Columbia College behind me, as you can see in the backdrop. And then I got a job at Lincoln University where I was a research professor. And at some point in time, around 2012 or 13, I decided I needed to reinvent myself. So I started the MAB program in 2014. And because I'm slow, I finished in 2017 because it took me an extra year to get the thesis done. I've continued to teach as an adjunct here and there, currently for Columbia College and Park University over in Parkville, Missouri, as well as St. Charles Community College up near St. Louis. So I'm sort of a jack of all trades. Getting into the MAB has allowed me to teach some economics types courses and probably some business courses in the future. So it's been beneficial, and I'll leave it there.
Next, could we hear from Joel Carlin? Joel, we're going to come back to you. Dr. Skyler Rinker, could you please share your experiences and your bio?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me on today. I'm honored and excited to be here. So a quick background about myself. I actually come from a family farm, agricultural background. Central Iowa is where I'm from, and received my bachelor's at Iowa State University, and I was ag studies undergrad here in the Department of Agricultural Education Studies at Iowa State. I had an agronomy industry type of focus with the intent of, at that point in time, serving in the ag industry. And as I was working I've had some experience in industry on the agronomy side, and then also on the agribusiness side and dealing in crop insurance. And during that time, I had the opportunity to pursue my master's, the MAB program, and got started with that in 2015. And by the time I was done in the spring of 17, I had realized that there are a lot of things with industry I enjoyed, but I kind of found a passion for the educational side of things too, which was really not my background in the beginning. So I had the opportunity to return to Iowa State, to my home department, the Ag Ed and Studies department, in the fall of 2017. I'm sorry, I started MAB program in 2017, finished in 2015, finished in 2017, and then I had the opportunity to come back to Iowa State and work on my PhD focused in agricultural education. And that's where I kind of received the educational training, the educational focus. So currently at Iowa State, what I do, I'm the instructor for the Ag 450 farm. And in short, the Ag 450 farm is a student managed farming operation that has been in place and in operation since 1943 here at Iowa State. It's a combination of row crop, swine, and custom operations. And the students each semester are responsible for making and executing the management decisions. So it couldn't have worked out any better. Super fortunate to have the opportunities that I do, and really enjoy kind of meshing industry and education in one. And that's really where my focus areas are currently, is capstone courses and helping to prepare students to enter into the ag industry, into the ag workforce, and working around and focused around the farm management and operations. So that's all. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Joel Carlin, are you available to speak about yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me? Or perhaps I was muted. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the economist for Western Milling. It's a large feed company in the San Joaquin Valley. We service that state's large dairy population, and I provide market research to clients. I do a weekly newsletter on the feed and dairy markets. I do some special reports. I do statistical summaries. So the emphasis of my research is on supply demand analysis of the grain, feed, and dairy markets. I do price forecasting, and I also help our clients with the implementation of price risk management programs. I got my bachelor's in arts and econ at Northwestern University. And from there, I worked down at the exchanges in Chicago, and that got me interested in agriculture, particularly agricultural research. And then from there, I took a position with Koch Industries in Wichita, Kansas. And it was there that I met a number of K-State graduates, and they were just starting the MAB program back then. And one of my mentors in the business, Bill Turney, he was an ag extension economist at K-State, encouraged me to apply. I did. It took me 10 years to do my thesis, but it was well worth it. From Koch, I went to Syracuse, New York. I worked as a research analyst for Agway, a big co-op up in the northeast part of the United States. And then I've been out in California for the last 20 years. So last year, my wife and I did relocate to Rhode Island after being 21 years in the state of California. But I'm still the economist at Western Milling. And one of the things I did is a few years ago, I did a presentation. Fresno State University has a big agribusiness conference, and they put on a presentation. They wanted me to put on a presentation about the dairy industry, both in the state of California and the United States. And some of the professors there were somewhat impressed with the way I put on a program, was able to integrate the audience and covered a fairly difficult task. And they asked me if I was interested in teaching. They came back and they offered me just a basic econ course. I wasn't too interested. But then later on, they asked if I would be interested in teaching ag and food policy in the agribusiness department. And I was very interested in that. So over the past 7 to 8 years, prior to this year, when I moved, I was adjunct faculty at Fresno State. And I either taught international ag econ, I taught agricultural macroeconomics, and then my favorite course was ag and food policy. So that's how I got into the educational end of the business.
And lastly, Jody Goetz, do you mind sharing with us your bio?
Sure, absolutely. So I did an undergrad degree at University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and it was in business management. And then I entered into the workforce shortly after that and tried to stick in the ag industry. I landed an extension and worked for the 4-H program for a county extension office. And I did that for a handful of years. During that time is when I started the MAB program. So I would have started in 2017 and finished the MAB in 2019. And during that time, I did end up switching jobs to gain some more industry experience and worked in ag lending. And then after I finished the MAB program, I liked the research part of the thesis and had already had teaching experience by being an adjunct at a community college for a couple of classes. So that's kind of what got me into wanting to do the PhD. So I'm currently in the PhD program in ag economics at K-State, and I will be finishing this August. So we're almost there.
So several of you have answered this a little bit, touched on it a little bit, but one of the first questions that we had was, what drew you to the MAB? And I will let you, if you all could unmute and we could just have a conversation about it.
I'll jump
go ahead.
in. Oh, sorry, Todd, you can go, or whoever jumped in. You got it. It's all you.
Okay, I'll just say that I had an aspiration to get an MAB, get a MBA at some point in time. But my experience was in agriculture. And then when I was looking to go back to school, I saw programs, for MBAs, and I saw the MAB program come up and a few others like it. And the MAB program gave me what I wanted. It allowed me to continue to work and continue to my education at the same time. So I was drawn to it because of the way the program was structured and what it offered.
Good. I had mentioned that, I was working for Koch Industries, and I really didn't know much about K-State, and a number of employees there were graduates of K-State, and I was so impressed with their breadth of knowledge. And I came to understand K-State's outstanding reputation in agriculture, particularly in ag econ. As I said, one of my mentors in the business was a former extension professor there. And they had just started the MAB program just a year before in 2000. And so I was encouraged to apply. I want to enhance some of my analytical understandings, increase my capabilities, talk with some people at the program, and I was very impressed. So I was part of the second program there. And I think it all has stemmed with just with all the K-State graduates I met working at Koch Industries. Very impressive.
Jody or Skyler, do you want to hop in?
I have nothing more to say because what Todd said is what I was going to say. So go, Todd.
And I'll just kind of reiterate, I guess, some of the things that were said for me specifically. And I tell my students this now. It was just kind of interesting how everything kind of fell into place for me. When I finished with my undergrad, like I said, I went right into industry, right into the agronomy sales and operations side for a local cooperative who I'd been interning for. And, really that was kind of where I thought my education was going to end. I said, okay, this will work great. This is a great opportunity. I'm going to keep going. Well, I come to find out I realized, I had a drive to be more in tune with the business side of things. And that's something I didn't focus, the agribusiness, the ag econ. I didn't have as much of a focus in my undergrad. And I actually had two friends that I met at Iowa State that had applied to the MAB program and encouraged me to apply. So it probably wouldn't have been, if it wasn't for them, I don't know how it would have shaken out. So I'm really fortunate to have had the opportunity to be exposed to the program. And then the program itself just offered excellent flexibility. And it was really nice to be able to tie in, obviously continue to work full time while working on my degree, but then you can tie in all of those things I was doing for both companies I worked for, because I transitioned jobs about halfway in between. And I was able to tie in what I was doing on a day-to-day basis, with my growers or the farmers, producers I was working with, and relate that back to the assignments and the things that we were completing in the program too. So it really, my involvement in industry and the workforce really went hand in hand with the program. And that was a huge benefit to me.
And I think Skyler kind of touched on this. One of the questions that I had asked our guest speakers was about their experience while earning their MAB. And one of the things that he really touched on was the flexibility of the program. And then one of the things that that Joel also talked about was his experience with that flexibility as far as the thesis is concerned, and the fact that we continue working with our students through the length of the program. Do any of you have anything additional to speak to as far as your experiences while earning your MAB? One of the things we as a staff talk about often is, the networking capabilities, and also the service that we as a staff try to provide, but also that excellent education that you clearly are earning your way through. Do any of you have any additional comments as far as your experience with earning your MAB?
I'll make a couple comments. So I earned my MAB on the GI Bill, and since earning it, I've had the opportunity to use my GI Bill for another master's program, and then use some continuing education credits that Park University gave me to get a master's in education. And so I'm at Oklahoma State now, finishing up a master's in agricultural education. And I only say that because each of those programs have been distance learning. So, Matt Chen's here. Matt was one of my classmates. So we've been together since 2014. I've known Matt 8 years now. I can tell you that my Park program, I have one or two folks that I correspond with that I knew there, and at Oklahoma State, nobody. And the networking opportunities and the cohort opportunities that the MAB program provides are outstanding. After you graduate, support and contact, Deborah and Mary and everybody else is exceptional. And so, having seen how these other graduate level programs operate, the MAB program at K-State is far and above the best format for providing a quality educational opportunity, and for providing this is MAB for life. I loved it because you guys at the campus, the admin folks, you really do provide this lifelong support to the graduates to really help us continue to grow and provide opportunities. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'd like to just add on. I started the program and it did very well in the classroom setting, but during the time I was there, particularly at the beginning of my MAB program, I had moved from Wichita to Syracuse and to California, so I had a lot of moves, and it delayed getting doing my thesis, and I was also doing a topic related to dairy science, so I had to educate myself on that. And I can't tell you how supportive, how much encouragement I got from the people back in Manhattan, wherever I was, to continue to press ahead, to push ahead, whatever you need. I mean, a couple of times they made arrangements for me to come back and work on campus, to meet with my thesis committee, whatever was needed, whether it was Alan or Deborah or Mary, or even the people beforehand, just to give me that push. They said, Joel, you've done all this work, and you need to cross the finish line. And I'm so happy I did, because it's really getting this MAB is one of the reasons I was able to teach at Fresno State, which has been one of the real joys in my life.
So moving on, could you talk about how your thesis topic helped you either with pursuing teaching or with pursuing your PhD? Skyler, could we start with you?
Sure. So I'm kind of thinking about that in my thesis topic, which was a feasibility study of the expansion of the swine operation and management of the ISU Ag 450 farm, which I now have the opportunity to be the lead instructor. it was at the time. So as I started deciding what that topic was going to be, I had started to make that decision, and I, nothing was official, but I, in the back of my mind, it was okay. I think I want to go back to Iowa State. I want to pursue my PhD. I want to teach. How can I tie both of these things together? So I had the opportunity to work with the ISU Ag 450 farm as kind of as the foundation for my thesis. How did that help me as I transitioned into teaching? Well, it went right in with what I was doing. So I had the opportunity when I came back to Iowa State to work on my PhD. I served as, I was on assistantship. So I made this kind of a really fast transition from ag industry to education. And then all of a sudden, the PhD became my full-time job, and I was on a teaching assistantship. So I guess what I'm trying to say is what worked out really well is that I had, chosen a topic that was related to what I was then doing as a graduate assistant, which is now directly tied into what we're doing and what I'm teaching at the Ag 450 farm. So I had to be a bit strategic about it, but it was, looking back on it, it was a really good move. And it no doubt helped to transition into that next step.
Jody, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, sure. My thesis topic per se did not help with teaching or anything like that, because I decided on the thesis topic before I decided to apply to PhD program. So I was 3/4 of the way done with the thesis before PhD was crossing my mind. So that didn't particularly help. However, the type of methods that I used for my thesis is kind of what pushed me over the edge to say that, yeah, I want to keep doing this. It was econometrics focused and things like that. So that helped me kind of explore that opportunity. And then entering into an ag econ PhD is very math and econometrics focused. So I guess it helped in that way. And it helped me want to learn more about those different methods that I was applying. And later learned that the methods I did apply in my thesis were very elementary and potentially not correct. So something that I should probably revisit and redo, but that would be, I guess, how the thesis tied in for me.
Todd or Joel, do you have anything to add to that? How your thesis helped either with teaching or pursuing a PhD?
Sarah, I looked at your question, and as I said, I can't really say that, how my thesis helped with either teaching or, pursuing a PhD. Where it did help, however, was making me a better economist at my job, because when I was at K-State, I took the operations research class, and one of the things we talked about optimization, and one of the first lessons we did was deriving a feed least cost feed ration model, and I spun that off into my thesis topic, and by doing that, it gave me a lot of insights. As both I was at Western Milling, I was also a trader and an economist. And that gave me some good insights as far as trading, gave me some good insights as an economist. And I think that I was able to take those skills and apply them to the teaching profession, because I think that a lot of my students appreciate the fact that I'm not a full-time faculty. I'm actually engaged, sort of in the real world, and I'm able to use my everyday work, or whether it's studying the feed markets or the dairy markets and the supply demand and all the political factors, and incorporate that into my curriculum. And I think that's been very, very helpful. So I think that my MAB made me a better economist, which in turn made me a better professor.
That's wonderful. Todd, do you have anything to add?
Well, since I had my doctorate when I came in, not really, but what I did help me in terms of relating to producers in the field and helping to educate producers. So, there's always value in what you do.
And it sounds like too that you, as you kind of talked about earlier, that it also helped you to diversify in the classroom, so that you're able to teach other classes that you might not have been able to taught prior to the MAB.
Yeah, that's correct. It gave me opportunities. It really depends on the college and how they look at your transcript and what you did, but I'm able to teach 200 level economics because of the MAB. So, community college or colleges that are four-year colleges, certainly if you have a master's degree, that's the entry level for teaching at most disciplines, with the exception of maybe art and music and those kinds of things. So you certainly can get in as an adjunct and do that with the MAB as your base doctorate and base educational level. So you don't need a doctorate to go ahead and teach at the college level. So.
That's a great reminder for some of the folks out there. Lastly, I know many of you have already talked on this, but do you have anything else you'd like to share about what you're doing now or what you're looking to do in the future?
Unfortunately, as I said, I moved from California to Rhode Island last year. It's sort of a big move, but to be close to my kids and be close to the water. And so I pursued, half-heartedly some educational opportunities out here. There aren't really any ag universities like Fresno State or Cal Poly or Davis out here, out in Rhode Island. So and for a while, as I said, I was, the past year and a half at Fresno State, I was teaching remote. And had they continued that, I probably would have continued. But as I say, I'm a better professor in person, and my students are better in the class as opposed to on a Zoom. So I still have an interest in the food world. So instead of teaching, I've actually gotten involved in a sort of a Farm Fresh, which is a group out here in Rhode Island that works to increase access to food. So I'm able to work in the garden. I'm able to write articles. I do a lot of writing about local food businesses and still educate. They have farm to school and community education and senior markets. And so I'm working with that. And so even though I'm not, teaching per se, I'm still involved in the education world in some ways.
Thank you, Joel. Does anyone else have anything to share about what they're doing as they're moving forward?
Well, I'll just say that I'm looking for a full-time job, but we'll see, what comes along, and trying to use the education background, whether it's been in education or it's the MAB, to find a full-time job. I certainly think that the MAB makes you competitive for industry when you come out with it. And the thesis option, I think, makes you very competitive for a PhD program. And, some master's programs that don't have a thesis option don't necessarily demonstrate your ability to do research and independent research. So I think that's a great advantage of what the MAB is and does. Dr. Bergthal and I, Jason and I, are working on a publication from the work I did on my thesis. We've published in Progressive Cattleman in the past, and we're trying to get a paper out into a scientific publication. So a lot of good can come from what your thesis project is past your time of graduation.
At this point, we're going to open up to questions. If any of you folks out there have any questions for, I know we do have questions in the chat box right now. You can feel free to put them in the chat box or unmute your mic and ask our panelists questions.
I know Deborah had a question early on in the chat, so I'll repeat it for the rest of us to answer here. She asks, did you have difficulty explaining, or sorry, the one before that, let me go further back. Here we go. Was there adjustment to the PhD program as far as did you study differently or have to prepare differently? So I can jump in, and I guess I need to precursor this and be careful about it because it sounds like all of us went through a different PhD program, as in it's not the same subject, which is okay. But in Ag Econ, typically students come in with a Master of Science to do the PhD. That means they're doing a master's degree full-time and they're hitting research hard. And the classes that they're taking are very econometrics focused. That's not necessarily the case with the MAB, which isn't a bad thing. That also means that I came in with industry experience while others did not. So we kind of contribute something differently. So I almost had to play catch up to my cohort and the rest of my peers on the econometric side. It's definitely doable. It's just a different kind of experience. And you're just coming in at a different level than the rest of your peers. So not necessarily a bad thing. It just kind of comes down to what you really want to get out of the PhD and where you want to go after that. And again, that's focusing on a PhD in Ag Econ. I can't speak much to any other PhD, but I'll end there and see what everybody else has to say.
Jody, I think you brought up a really good point in that before you embark on a PhD program, you really need to know what do I want to be when I grow up type of thing. Where do I want to end up? Do you want to end up back in industry in a PhD job? Do you want to be a manager in industry that requires a PhD? Or do you want to go into education? And I think it's important that you kind of go into it with open eyes about both where you want to be, and then make sure that you have options. Academic positions can be difficult to obtain. It's kind of cliquish at times in some universities. So it can be very disillusioning because it's just a difference. You're not a student anymore when you complete the program. You're somebody who's supposed to be an academic professional in that workplace, and you're treated a little bit differently at times, which doesn't mean that some institutions don't welcome people and really work to build those people, but not all do. And then I think the other part that's important is to know whether you want to be a research PhD or a teaching PhD. And when I was accepted for my doctorate, I was accepted at Iowa State, and I'd been a teaching assistant on my first master's. And I was thinking about it. They had a really good, in the agronomy department, a teaching program, but I decided I wanted to focus on research, so I went elsewhere. But I think that's an important thing to look for when you go to a university to do the program. Where do you want to be in 5 years after you finish that program? Do you want to be teaching? And if you want to be teaching, go focus on a university that can provide you the basis to be a successful teacher, because PhD programs, just like master's programs, don't teach you how to teach. They teach you about the subject matter. And the reason I went back and got the master's in education and doing this ag ed, one is because I had opportunity, but because I do this teaching, I kind of wanted to learn more about it. So if that's where you want to be, that if you go into a PhD program, perhaps you ought to look at taking some of those educational classes at the undergraduate level and the lower level master's levels, so you have a better idea of how to be an effective instructor wherever you end up. And you can be an instructor in industry too, but being able to be an instructor and knowing who you want to instruct, whether it's undergraduates, whether it's non-traditional undergraduates, or it's adult education, have an effect on what type of educational programs you present, and you should know how to do those.
So Scott asked a question in the chat box. I just wanted to make sure that everyone saw it, and I saw that Jody also answered the question. Scott said, Todd mentioned the MAB as the base degree to begin teaching. Do you think there are other courses of studies that should be taken that would help in pursuing teaching? A PhD is not an option. I know Todd just spoke to that, looking at other educational pursuits, even at the undergraduate level. After talking with Todd a few days ago on the phone, he has pursued several different areas of education in order to provide himself with several different courses of action as far as teaching. And it allows him, as he spoke to teach at 2 different colleges and to teach 2 different subject matters, as well as in the past also having taught in the econ space as well. So this is definitely a great space to continue to ask those questions. We do have about 20 minutes left of the webinar. Skyler, if you would like to also talk on that, if you have a different experience, that would be fantastic to hear.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think with everything that's been said, and it really just in terms of teaching and degree requirements and experience, it just all depends, as Todd mentioned a little bit too, where is that focus and fit? And for me, for example, when I was in undergrad or just started in industry, or when I first started the MAB program, teaching education wasn't really on my radar. So I kind of had to, once I figured that out and realized that was the path that I want to pursue, and that's when you start trying to, you think, okay, what's the focus and what's the fit? Where do I want to end up? What am I interested in? And then, what type of role does that look like in the end, as far as the educational side? So, and it also depends, again, on the subject matter, the degree in which you're pursuing a PhD, and the field of study too. So, for instance, in the Ag Ed and Studies department at Iowa State, we have some teaching faculty that have a master's and industry experience, or maybe it was secondary education, right? And they've got their master's, and they're working with our students, and the exact same students that our tenure track professors are working with. So we have a mix, and I think in agricultural education in general, you get there's a wide, it's such a broad area. There's a wide array of individuals with various levels of experience and different experiences and expertise, coming together. So that's where my mind goes on it. It's, what's the focus and what's the fit, and then how can you, get to work on it, I guess.
We've also had a few questions and answers in the chat box. I just wanted to make sure that we speak to those in case we don't see them, in case anyone that's connected to a mobile device is not seeing the chat boxes. So one of the things Deborah asked was, do you see a difference in hiring at Tier 1 or Tier 2 schools? And I know, Todd, you're kind of still looking, like you said, for a full-time position. Is that something that you're necessarily seeing, particularly in your region in Missouri?
Actually, if you're asking me to be honest, I'm going to tell you that when they look at my resume, my CV, and they realize that I graduated from undergrad last century, I'm not, they won't tell you that they're going to do age discrimination, but I strongly suspect that there's some of that that goes on. So yeah, I think that there might be some, and I'm going to use the word discrimination, but in terms of trying to select the candidate that some tier 1 or tier 2 universities, colleges want, they're going to look at what kind of publications you have, what research work you've done, and those kinds of things, and how much the impact of those are in some cases. So, you know, you've got to have a plan that's realistic on where you might be able to find a position. And I think the key thing is when you find that position, just make the most of it, make yourself happy in terms of whether you're teaching or whether you're doing teaching and research or just research. What winds your watch, and does that position fulfill your personal needs? Deborah had one other thing that I'd like to touch on, and that was the certificate programs. And I don't know what K-State has for certificates, but at Oklahoma State, they have a certificate in online teaching, which I rolled into my master's program there. But they also have a certificate in college teaching. And I really don't know the value of the certificates in terms of how they would make you more competitive for a teaching position with a master's. But I think that they're, 8 courses, all distance learning over 2 years. Sounds like the MAB. But it gives you a good idea of how to go about doing, in my case, online or hybrid type teaching, where you have that technology that's part of the teaching component. And a lot of universities, colleges, et cetera, are going to that. COVID has really pushed people to that point, and having an understanding of not only how to use Zoom, but how do you present things. And I think that's both an interesting field for research and developing the skill sets to be able to really be able to use the resources to their fullest is an important thing that could make you stand out in a job interview, as you line up against other candidates.
That's definitely helpful information to think about, is those remote teaching points. I kind of saw Jody light up as Todd was saying that. And that's certainly something that we have seen clearly in the last 2 years. Does anyone else have any other questions? I am seeing in the chat box again. I mean, I think that all of you that have participated in the program understand how strong and important the network is, that network that you build, and how it does often help to frame and propel the rest of your career as you move forward. I know Jody spoke to that helping her with her pursuit of her Ph.D. So just maintaining those networks at this point, it's so important, both in teaching and in industry. That's a great question. Earl just asked if anyone has an experience teaching overseas, and how is the MAB perceived in other countries?
When I interact with other faculty members that are overseas with various research projects that I've been working on, when they ask about your education history, all I have to say is it's a master's in ag business. They don't really push further to know if that means that's a master's of science, or if that was a full-time program or part-time. But if you're going to say, yeah, I did the master's of ag business program at K-State, it's not going to probably create a light bulb effect like it does in a lot of industries here in the States. Not a bad thing. We're getting there, especially with if I talk to my network of MAB classmates and others cohorts around me overseas, of course, they're gonna recognize that as well. So it just kind of depends.
I would agree with Jody. I've done some work with the university in England, and the MAB didn't make much of a difference. The doctorate made more of a difference. It was not in a field unrelated to agriculture. It was one of those serendipitous opportunities that I had when I was sitting in my room in Afghanistan, knowing I was going to retire from the Army in 8 months and was looking for a job. And I landed as a gig with the University of Leicester, and I worked as they call a thesis a dissertation there. So I was a dissertation advisor to about 70 students over the course of about 10 years on a wide variety of topics. So from that experience, I would say some of the key things are the ability to mentally be agile, to go take on different projects and do different things. And then secondly, to be a good writer and a good editor and a good team player. If you can do those things, your degrees will translate globally.
Yeah, Sarah, I'd like to, mention that if you're, for some reason, just want to have an MAB and not content to, and don't have the resources or, at this point, pursue a PhD program, I do want to emphasize the fact that getting an MAB from Kansas State will open up a lot of doors, a lot of adjunct faculty positions. I mentioned that at Fresno State, they saw me do a presentation. And one of the reasons I do a lot of presentations, speak to a lot of groups, give market outlooks. And one of the reasons I was able to do that, I had a lot of experience doing that when I was a student at Kansas State, whether it was certain projects where I had to go up and give a presentation, or the presentation I gave for my thesis. It gave me a lot of experience to feel comfortable with the subject matter and to be able to get up in front of an audience. And that's where the Fresno people saw me. But then they didn't know anything about my K-State MAB. And that once they saw that, and they realized, they're very familiar with the reputation, the professors I had, the courses I took, that was almost like icing on the cake. So if you're pursuing a career in industry, but still have a passion for teaching, and you want to have an adjunct faculty position, K-State MAB is perfect for that.
I might just add in one thing, kind of just along the lines of the MAB and the benefits and things of that nature. So what I thought was really neat was to be able to, just the fact of how the MAB program is set up. So, we're at a distance, we spend a little time on campus, but you're with that cohort all the way through, which is really unique, I think. Even in terms of, I know our ag education master's program here at Iowa State isn't formed in a cohort type like the MAB is. So it's really cool to be able to work through that program at K-State with the same group of individuals for the most part. You get to know them really well there, and then the networking and the connections start to take place. Then all of a sudden you finish up and you have a lot of industry contacts from across the country and across the globe. For me, that was huge, because even in the role that I'm in now, we're operating a student managed farming operation. I have to be tied into industry. I also farm on the side too. So there's a multi-benefit factor there, just in terms of connections that I was able to make. And those people, individuals I was in school with at K-State, we still talk on a regular basis. We connect, we bounce ideas back and forth. So that's what's, I think, one of the benefits just to the program in general, whether or not you are looking to pursue further education or if you're going to take a job and move from there.
Do we have any more questions or anything else to add?
I'll add one more thing. So I've been pretty fortunate that I've had opportunities to go to school, and I've done those on OPM, other people's money. Other than my undergraduate work, pretty much all of my educational expenses have been paid for. In my case, GI Bill covered a lot, but when I first got my master's and doctorate, I had assistantships, and Skyler mentioned he had an assistantship, and if you're thinking about doing this and you're thinking about, man, do I want to go 3 years and go into debt? Depending on what your flexibility is and your situation is, there's probably some opportunity to get financial aid in terms of an assistantship for you to support your program as you move forward into a doctoral program. And that's really up to you. And I'll tell you the one thing about having the opportunity to be on campus and be in a doctoral program is the relationships you build not only with your advisor and the other faculty members, but with your fellow graduate students. And I can tell you, I learned as much working on my classmates' research projects as I learned on my own research project throughout that period of graduate education. So depending on what you want to do, seek out an assistantship if there's any available to you. So that's just my advice.
Thank you very much. I do have a few slides to share, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So just a reminder to anyone who has not already done the program, I believe most of the folks out there participating are alumni, but feel free to schedule an advising appointment with Deborah, or you can call me here at the office or respond to my emails, because many of you get many emails from me. We always love to know where our alumni are and what you're doing as you make career changes. So feel free to reach out to us, whether you are a prospective student or alumni. Our next two webinars, we have an informational webinar on February 8th at noon Central, and on February 22nd, we will be visiting with Dr. Sia Van Schleiden, who will talk to us about bandwidth recovery. We invite you all back during your lunch hour to participate in that. And then lastly, just a reminder, we love to connect on social media, so feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Or again, the old-fashioned way, feel free to reach out to us by email or phone. We are here to listen and to understand where you're going and what you're doing. So much appreciated, all of our guest speakers today. Thank you so much for participating in today's webinar. We had a lot of interest in what you folks are doing, teaching. Several people who asked for the recording. So while you might not have seen a lot of as many participants as maybe you thought we would, we've had a lot of folks that have reached out. So thank you so very much for your participation today. We appreciate it so much. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.